Okay, are we ready to resume?
Yes,
All right, on the record, please, who will be the next witness for the petitioners?
I will.
Okay,
I'll be the next.
Ms. Kamaunu, let me ask you to take your oath.
All right.
Can I have you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Ms. Kamaunu, earlier in our proceedings, you had made an extensive statement. Can we consider that your statements made in the previous days of our hearing can be accepted as testimony provided under oath?
As part of my testimony, or just
Yes.
that would be the.
No, as part of your testimony.
Oh, okay. Sure, that's fine.
All right, Mr. Horikawa, are you okay with that?
It happened so long ago, so I don't know. I don't have any problem with it.
I'm sorry, I think you guys have both the mics going in. It's hard to understand what you're saying.
He stated he had no objections to that. Okay. Ms. Kamaunu, why don't you go ahead and make your statements, please?
Okay. I guess kind of my background in this case. I actually, I think it was about 2009 or so, or even previous to that, where I got involved with the burials. It was Miss Apana and one of our other friends that actually were already involved. And so I got involved through being curious of what they were doing. And this was during the time of the Safeway project here in Wailuku, which is among the sand dunes off of Ka'ahumanu Highway. And so we went to that area to do protocols, our cultural practice. And I started to learn about what was actually happening within the sand dunes. And I was approached by Apana. She asked me if I had any relationships to the burials that were there or that were in that area, because they were already doing surveys and work in this area. And so some of the burial sites were found. And I said, I don't think so, that I'm connected. And so anyway, we were on Oahu. We were at the Bureau of Conveyance, and we were at the archives doing some genealogical work on a property that we have. And lo and behold, I come across a record. And this area where Safeway is located is Owa. That was the name. And I remembered that name because it was a name I never heard before. And so as we were doing our research on Oahu, I came across this passage that was in one of the native testimony records, which referred to a person called Kekahuna. And it said Owa on Maui.
Can I just stop you real quick so I can
Sure.
spell that correctly? Is it Owa or Allah?
Owa.
Owa.
O-W-A.
O-W-A. Thank you.
Okay. And so in my lineage, there is Kekahuna that is in my descent line. And it kind of threw me that I would be able to find such information, because anybody that does research knows that it takes a long time to make connections. And I wasn't particularly looking for this connection, but it happened to appear. And so because of that, it drove me back to what Miss Apana asked me. And, you know, it was several times that she kept asking me that. And then this record appears. And now I find myself as an advocate, not just for a cultural site, but now as a lineal descendant to the area because of Kekahuna. And it says Kekahuna had 8 lo'i in the area of Owa. And so, you know, on my property, I still have lo'i. And so the connection gets even stronger. So as we get further into this project, we start to see that, desecration starts with one, the burial council, I believe for 2 years or so, ended up not having quorum, and we weren't able to participate. I was making my connection as a lineal descendant, and because of that not having quorum, I wasn't given that opportunity to finalize my descendancy. But it was never disputed by the burial council. It was supposed to be revisited. And so with that being said, this is where I come to actually engage with Miss Ratuno, Hazaka. I was invited along with my eldest sister to reinter 23 23 of our people, or you could even say parts of our people. And this was, after Safeway was pretty much being built and was almost being in its conclusion. And because we couldn't participate through the burial council for that time, the work for this project, the Maui Shopping Center, was allowed to progress. The only way that we could intercede was to be physically there and protest. And there was no other ways for us to be engaged. And with that being said, there were more burials found in that area. And so when it was time that it was almost completed, they brought us in to re-enter our EV. And we were first told there were only 8 that were actually going to be returned. When we got there that evening, there was 23. And from what I remember, those other 15 weren't from their projects. They were from different areas. And that kind of, I was already upset because of all the disturbance that had gone on in the Maui area. So if you go there, they were already in barrels there. I believe that were 6 or 7 of them. And then we came in with other some to be returned, which were 8. And then we had 15 more. And, that really took a toll on me because I felt my connection to that area, to my people. And, and I always believe that professionals in any profession take pride in their work and do everything that they possibly can to make sure that they do the best work. And when you're dealing with this type of situation where possible burials or possible disturbance, not only of burials but historic sites are in concern, you would believe that the utmost care of performing your work would be very prominent in your mind because of the sensitivity of the area. Now, Ms. Hazuka has worked throughout this area, and she knows what area this is, and that the sensitivity of this area is, and highly to find burials. She mentions it in a report, I think of 2010, and she makes the statement, and I believe she stated that earlier, that yes, there is a high potential to find more EV. And as a person that calls herself an archaeologist, I'm not saying she's qualified, but a person refers to her as an archaeologist herself. And when you look at the work that has been performed in this area, it's disturbing. Whether it's the methodology that they use to do surveys, and I mean, if you look through many of the projects, such as like Phase 6 and like Safeway, these places at one, you look at the permits and they say no historic significance or properties found, or and supposedly that should be an expert's what is the word I'm looking for? I mean, that's why you need an expert. You need a person that understands that even by looking, they can tell you, without even touching anything, that they can tell you what that area will possibly produce, so that you would make sure that the least disturbance, if any at all, would be done. And yet, as we have gone through these years of dealing with this, time and time again, mistakes have been made on the AIS, that archaeological inventory survey, and they go from maybe nothing to maybe 5, like I believe in phase 9, and then you go from 4 to 187 in phase 6, and these are just some of the places that got reported. They don't, and it's disturbing to think that, okay, if you take a place like this and maybe you make one mistake, maybe, but I mean, when you continuously, your surveys show to me incompetence, or that the method that you're using is not conducive, and then you keep finding people after the fact. And what is really disturbing is that they like to use the word inadvertent. And it's so loosely used. And, it's supposed to be, from what my understanding is, inadvertent is, it's like highly unlikely you're gonna even find. You did your survey, you did your preliminary background check, and all these things all fell into place, and that now you're gonna go in there with the confidence that you're not gonna find anything. And then when you come up to, oh, we found one. But in this case, which is so devastating to us, this is the word that comes to me. Oops. Sorry. And that continuously happens. And companies like Ash rely on that use of that word and the misunderstanding of the burial council to truly understand what an inadvertent find is. It's not that, every single burial that you're gonna find is an inadvertent find. I mean, when you go in and look at what's happening, they go and check maybe like I believe like 3% of the area or whatever it is, 10% of the area, and then you don't find anything, and then you go back and you start digging up the 90%, and you finding them all over, and they're not just one here and maybe one 50 yards away. It's like you can bump into one right there. I mean, where you did your survey, right there, there's a burial right there. And it's disturbing that they're allowed to and rely on that terminology, inadvertent, oops, sorry, you're not supposed to be there. No, if you're an expert, if you know your job, okay, you know what to expect. I, by profession, am I deal in law enforcement. I'm with the Correctional Center. I've been doing that for 28 years. I understand my job. I understand people's body languages. I understand just by looking at them, I know basically what they're thinking, especially if I'm going to diffuse a situation. I mean, I know this, and there's a highly potential of me endangering myself or fellow workers or other custodies that are there. I better recognize the signs because my life depends on it. So does the other person. And so I believe that if you are going to say that you're an archaeologist, that you better know those signs. You should know if I'm going over here, whoa, that looks like, I mean, I'm not even close to being anybody that, is an archaeologist. I can walk into a place and say, oh, that looks kind of, I see stone walls. I say, okay. I see certain things, oh, that might be questionable. But, I'm far inadequate to make that decision. But these people, such as us, are making these determinations. And they have a person that's qualified. His name is Jack Pantaleo. But he feels, on his point of view, that it's okay for him to come a couple times a year. I mean, for me, that's like as a lineal descendant of this area and seeing all this damage, and and this person just casually says, "Oh, I come a couple times a year." Dr. Ferris stated the utmost important part of archaeology is the burial. White gold, and even though Ashley's not involved, they too, they said they were going to find any. And they, within a short amount of time, they went up to 9, not even in a month's time. And this is the kind of treatment that we get. This is what we have to deal with. And we're trying to tell them that, we try to tell them the molelos, the stories of the place. If you look at the story tells you that Kahikili left those warriors unburied from the Big Island. And that was a warning to any of the people who came to do battle with him. This is what could happen to you. And you're talking about the PEPE and Olapa. You know, you're talking about 2 regiments that came to do battle. The significance of that sand dune was how he won that battle. And where is it today? Where is that sand dune? Where is that location? I cannot tell my grandkids that. I cannot give them more because it doesn't exist anymore. So it's not only the burials, but the mo'olelos, the importance of all these things. And these people, like Ash, come in here with their Western mentality and they destroy it all. What took the earth billions of years to build those sand dunes, which are so recognizable to us as a people, where our people live, and then it's all gone. In a few years, they have all disappeared. They went from sand dunes, now they call it the Central Plains. That Central Plain never existed. It was the Puʻuone. Where's my Puʻuone? It was stated, once taken, can never be bought back. It's never going to return to me. That mo'olelo is lost. Those people, my people, who in 1860 received their rights to be buried there by Hawaii Kingdom, and it states they have the right. And the reason why they gave in that law, because in our culture, they never die. They never die. They live on because the mana is inside there. That's why they protect the iwi, especially certain warriors. They protect them. They hide them because other people are looking for that mana. You can imagine how much mana Kamehameha would have. Kamehameha brought everybody together. How much mana would you get from his bone, from his po'o, especially? That mana. That's why they hid them. But they also know that this is they know this is the resting place. You know Hana Inu, you don't touch them. But our people put a law. But we're being told that, because we didn't put crosses, because we don't go over there and put lays and visit our kūpuna, that they don't exist. The mo'olelo says they exist. Our traditional oratorial testimonies say those things. But then, sorry, you guys never mark them because they're not cemeteries. Sorry, you know what I mean? But you knew that was there. If you did the background check like Dr. Ferris said, you would have known that. And those things exist. But yet, the things are dismissed. Who we are gets dismissed. People don't realize when Dr. Ellison talked about trauma, they live. For us, they live. They're not dead. They talk to us each and every day. And yet people think that is an imaginary thing. But when our people are gone, when you take our iwi, no, that's only part of a person. You're not talking about the ano, the spirit of the person. You're not talking about all the essence. What makes up a human? It's not only the bones. But what about the skin? What about the fluids? What about all these things? They all mixed into that sand. And I asked the county council. I made a demonstration. I used things to show sand and the possibility of, say, this is a person's being. And I put them all together and I shook it up and I asked the county council, I want you to go through this and sit.
What's this phone?
Oh, I think it's your phone, Claire. I think it's a notification. Yeah. So all that ano, all the rest of stuff that makes a person is within that sand. But nobody takes that into consideration. But this is who we are. But nobody wants to know who we are. They don't want to know that. They don't want to listen to that. Because why? It deters for them to make money. $30 million. The last year that they did sand mining, $30 million. And inside they get our people, the ano. Their blood, their sweat, their tears, their skin, everything is in that. And that was taken. And there's no way to regain that. How did that get put by? How do we ask to continue to say, well, you know, you can continue on? Is there any way to fix this? No. But there is a way to stop this from happening. And it's from not allowing people and organizations and companies such as ASH with bad practices working. This is why we're here. The aches and the pains that we go through each and every time I pass the Puʻuone. The Puʻuone is up on my house. I get one family burial up on that Puʻuone. And I get people digging over there too. And what did they do? They found all through the Puʻuone. My mother, she scolded us, you guys don't belong up there. What you guys playing up there for? Get burials inside there. You know, go up on it because that's burials. And was my mother wrong? No. Look at from Waihehe. Bones. Paukukalu. Wailuku, kahului. And the sad part, this person doesn't want to tell us how many of our people were destroyed, were taken from their sanctuary, was taken from a legal place that they were given rights to be. Article 12, Section 7, State of Hawaii, Constitution, 1976, stated customary traditional practices. 1860 was a law. It was a traditional practice of ours to put our people in the sand. But no, what get golf courses. And now we get these gated communities. Hawaii never had gated communities. We never needed them, but we get gated communities now. We get sewer lines running on our people. We get roads running over our people. And all that is lost. All that is lost because it doesn't belong in the Western context. The trauma, the magnitude of the trauma, you know, I'd have to say this. You know, you hear the term, lucky you live Hawaii. That is so true. Because any place else in the world, the people won't be so cordial. You know, you look around the world and what's happening to the indigenous people of the world, and they're standing up, and there's a lot of things that are happening. We come into this situation not because we're against development, not because we are against progress, but we are against those that clearly cannot perform the work correctly.
and that haphazardly go about doing bad work. And the state of Hawaii doesn't do enough to protect us from these vultures. We have these beautiful laws. 60 is beautiful. How many of them are held to it? I asked Dr. Downer. So you know that get penalties in this statement of conditions? Oh, well, if it's there. Don't you guys know? Don't you people understand that that's there to protect these cultural sites, these burial sites, these historic places that they never can be replaced? But nobody followed those rules. And who takes the loss? The developer, Aole. The archaeologist, Aole. Kanaka Maoli. I. And we reached out. For 13 years, we reached out. We paid money to take flights to Oahu, go in front of Oahu, wherever we could speak in front of, we went. We went to all the meetings. We went to land use commission meetings. We went to planning commission meetings. We went to all types of, meetings, Kahului, Wailuku, Hana, any place that was talking about Iwi, Lahaina. We would go all over. We'd stand on streets and hold signs. And people thought that we were against construction. We're not against construction. We're against bad archaeology. We're against bad information. We are against bad planning. And if you look at the work that these people have produced, there's no way I could consciously allow these people to continue to work. You come to Safeway, you tell me get 8, and all of a sudden you come that night, 23, and you don't know where the other 15 came from? And you know what's funny? My son called me that night. He called me, Dad, what you guys doing over there? I said, what? He said, somebody came to me and they're saying they don't belong there. And he really didn't know what we were doing. But he calls me and he tells me, what you guys doing? So now one of those 23 don't even belong there. And of course, like, oh, they are superstition. Let me tell you, I know these things to be true. I grew up with this stuff. It's not something I talk about, not something I share, but I think it's important. But people don't realize is that we know our people continue to live. We know that even though we cannot see them, they're in another space. I've been to situations where we deal with this. We deal with this kind of things, these spirits. And to fact, Safeway, right after the thing was built, you know where the number one spot in Hawaii was to go during Halloween? Maui Lani Shopping Center Safeway. The number one haunted place in Hawaii. They was announcing them all over the radio. They were saying, yeah, you guys want to do this for Halloween, go to Safeway. I was very upset with that because our people, or these people were producing that, had no idea that what's happening here is that these people or these spirits, right? These spirits that still remain there. How do you think they view everything? All of a sudden, they went from, you know, having all the other family members there, this huge sand dune with all these other burials, and they with their families and those that they're with. And all of a sudden, you get these big tractors coming in and they start tearing up the place. They start tearing up the place. And now what you're missing is family members. All of a sudden, this piece gets taken away. This EV get taken away. And all of a sudden, you know, they're looking and they cannot find them. So what do? They act out because they're upset. They want to know, where's my brother? Where's my sister? Where's my mother? Where's my father? Where's my grandparents? And now they're not there. So what do? They're angry. And they try to tell you. But people don't realize this. They think, they're just dead people. They're not around. Safeway, #1 haunted place, right after the thing got built. You tell me that's what happened. They're in a conflict. They're in a war. They want to know why their people not there. It's like you waking up, all of a sudden your mother disappears and you have no idea. Your daughter disappears. You have no idea. They were taken. You don't know who took them. You don't know why they went. Well, see, these are the cultural things that people from the Western society don't understand. They have no concept, but they don't learn it. They don't take the time to learn. And they don't want to. But we the ones take the loss. Our mo'olelo's gone. Our ancestors gone. Yeah. Historic area, gone. No more exists. So you're telling me no more Hawaiian, no more Kanaka. And I've seen this through all these years. And sad to say that this person is responsible for these things. Or very much a problem. And she knows it. She knows it. She knows she's responsible for the anger I feel, for the destitution that I feel. She saw it in my face. She felt it. And every time you gotta go to that burial council meeting. And then what happens? Oh, there's Safeway. Oh, there's Kaiser Permanente. And if you go over there, if you were to take a trip over there, you're gonna see all the preservation sites. All in the Maulani shopping center. You're gonna see them. And then you go by Kaiser Permanente, you're gonna see another one. Up by the dialysis, you're gonna see another preservation site. And you keep going on and on. You go through all the developments in Maulani. Yeah, one small area, but where the bear came from, how many barrels are inside, they don't know. They don't like tell us. You say, oh, this is when the cultural part comes in. We cannot tell you the public. We cannot tell you guys this. We cannot disclose that. It's not culturally correct. Was it culturally correct to take them away? So our culture is only important when you can use them against us. When you can use it against us. And then take. There's no giving back. When you talk about these preservation sites, oh yeah, we made beautiful stone walls. Why? It was a beautiful place already. was a beautiful sand dune that only on Maui, this feature is only found on the island of Maui. No other feature like this Puʻuone exists except for Maui. And now it's remnants. Remnants. These wonderful stories I talk about. There's people that actually lived in those areas. And you talk about the battle, Kaikiri, up on the hill in Waikapu, up there, guiding his warriors through the sand dunes. But you go up to that area where he was, nothing. It's flat ground. The igneous is gone. What took the earth billions of years to create, gone. Because somebody bought property there. Somebody wanted to develop $1 million residential area, Dream City, and all the other stuff that comes out. Well, where's our burials? We ask every time, how many? Where are they? Where are all these burials? Where did our people go to? What happened to them? But it's not only in the Maulani, Wailea also. When they were doing the construction for Wailea, hundreds of burials. They don't like tell us where the thing stayed. They don't like tell us where it went because culturally that's wrong. Yeah. No reports. Oh, but complications with the reports. So out of 8 projects, we get 2. Or I think it was 1 in one instance, and then went to 2 in the next instance, and then 3. I was like, yeah, but you get 8 projects according to the statement of conditions. 30 days after the monitoring, the report's supposed to be in. But for years we're still waiting. So this is just, to me, it went from disturbance to grotesque. And we are asked, the Kanaka are asked to, move along. This is the past. Move along. It's okay. Just forget about these things. And it's funny because when this COVID comes up, essential work, construction. How does construction become essential? That's for private businesses. Essential is that government workers, workers that serve the community. These are essential. Medical staff, law enforcement. But no, construction goes on, archaeology goes on, desecration of our iwi kūpuna go on, and yeah. And we left just shaking our heads, and just in disgust that we mean nothing. Everybody talk about the Hawaiians. We talk about the Kanakas. We talk about aloha. No Kanaka, no aloha. That comes from the people. That comes from the culture. There is no place in this world like Hawaii. Hawaii is the first place that it brought all the world together in one place and would learn to live with each other in peace and harmony. And yet, we the people that get erased. We the people that take in a loss. We keep being asked to take losses. and it hits us, and then we can never regain those things that we lost. But people keep telling us, oh, where's the Holy Spirit? You know, Mālama. No more my people. Who are we now? No more the Moleos. Who am I? No more my ancestors. Do I exist? Can I really call myself Kanaka? When I look around, and we got all these modern burials being protected by their crosses and by their headstones, and my people just thrown away like garbage or pollen. Or we make this nice big hole, you take a big hole and they throw our people in one hole. And they make a nice rock wall. But then does anybody go and care for it? No. Has anybody seen the disarray that these places are in? Because nobody goes to take care. Only us. But I've really done. You know what I mean? It's do I want to be angry? No. Do I hate people? No. Am I disgusted? Yes. Am I frustrated? Yes. Do I wish bad upon people? No. And if this, for some reason, turns out against us, I would still be here. I still be counting for my people. My fight will never end until the kūpuna are allowed to rest and to stay and to remain where they belong. Until that day comes, I will continue to fight against wrongdoings by people who do the wrong things and try to say they're doing the best they can. They're following the laws. And that, oh, this is what is afforded us to do. And yet, the same mistakes, year in, year out, with every permit given, same work done, same results, same destruction, same desecration, same anguish, and more loss, and more displaced. It's a joke that, Hawaii people homeless, living on the land, and we're homeless. And now even in death, we find no peace. Even in death, we are homeless. Homeless in our own country. Left to wander. And only, we can't even remember the past because that's been taken. But I really don't have much more to say. But this, we hope, will at least bring light to an issue that has been overlooked for years. And that, my promise, when I started this, my wife started a vigil. And so we would go and we would overnight from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. We would go and we would stay with our kūpuna, just like at Safeway. And we would do pule, and we would do other protocols throughout the night, praying for our kūpuna. And one of those practitioners that was with us, because there was a black curtain for the dust, she was saying, you know, I believe our kūpuna are trying to reach us, but they cannot see us. So we need to go to an area where the cloth isn't the partition in between us and our kūpuna. So we did. We found a place. It was the entrance for what is today Safeway, a Maui shopping center. And when we got there, it was a beautiful night. Light winds, beautiful sky, starlit, moon. And it was about maybe 13 of us. We went down. And when we got down there, the picture that came to my head, what I saw when I looked into the area, I saw what was to be the kahuna with his helmet, the gourd. And he asked me, who are you and why are you people here? And as I looked at him, I looked behind him, and it was just an abundance of people. He was a center, almost like a triangle, and they just continued to. These people was just couldn't even. You couldn't see the end. It was an ocean of people wanting to know who we were and why we were here. I never thought that I'd have to consider that until I was asked by this kūpuna. And I told him. And I asked everybody there, if you want to tell them who you are and why you're here, they want to know. So one by one we did. And we started to pull it from a beautiful sky, starlit sky with a moon. You see the clouds start to roll in from Iao Valley, from the mountain. And in an instant, pouring rain. I mean, pouring rain. But none of us moved. We stood there with our heads bowed. And simultaneously, without anybody seeing anything, we all lifted our hands. And as soon as we did that, the sky was clear again. The clouds rolled back, the beautiful stars, a moon, and we weren't even wet. For myself, I don't even remember being wet. But that experience alone, from that day on, I promise I'll never let them be forgotten. And I carry that till today. So no matter what happens, I carry them with me, and they carry me. I am Kanaka. I'm Kekeokaina. Thank you, Mahalo.
Take a break.
Thank you, Manu.
We take a break.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go back on the record. Mr. Orikawa, do you have any questions? You're muted.
You're both muted.
Ms. Suzuka's gonna, I'm gonna go mute. I'm gonna mute and then Ms. Suzuka will do the cross exam.
You know, I know that this is very painful for Mālama Kakanilua, and it is painful for us. And I don't, I mean, there's several things that Mr. Kamaunu testified to that I have a different recollection, and I don't want to have him and make him, but I would like to
Feedback.
Yes, just a minute. Yeah, something's happening.
I think you might have a poor internet connection, it seems like right now. Maybe just give it a second.
Gotcha.
It was lagging a lot.
Yeah, the words were beginning like being stretched and stuff.
Okay. Can we hear now?
That was good. That was fine. Let's try again.
That's good. Okay. So if to clarify my recollection or our recollection, if we should just state certain things, or should we ask Mr. Kamaunu? You're fine?
She's asking, are you asking Mr. Chang?
Me, or you asking me?
Well, I guess I'm kind of asking both. What would be the proper?
No records for 813 days.
Whatever you testified to, he's the hearing officer has already said it's part of the record. So.
Okay.
No.
Okay, so are we, I guess.
Go ahead. You can ask if you have questions of Mr. Kamaunu. Go ahead.
Okay. You were discussing that the number of reinterments changed on the night of the ceremony. And my recollection is that I and someone else had several discussions with Clare about how many offerings, ho'okupu, you folks wanted to bring, and we had discussed the numbers then. When we do a reinterment ceremony, the reinterment locations, the excavation areas are done before you folks get there so that we have everything prepped. I guess in a nutshell, we did not add anything additional that was not in the burial preservation plan or in the burial component of the data recovery plan. Part of the burials, I think he's still in the room though. Part of the burials that were relocated were ones that we're under the proposed Safeway building, if you recall. And those went to Burial Council and SHPD, whether it was appropriate to build the Safeway building on known in situ burial sites, or was the consensus to relocate those burials. And so those burials, as well as I believe there was 3 in the parking lot, were relocated up to that high dune where you're talking about the change in number of reinterments. I don't know if you recall any of that.
I remember we had prepared 8 baskets because Clare inquired of Hinano how many reinterments at the time, and he told her 8. So we made only 8 baskets for that evening because that's what we were told. And then when we got there, it was 23. So that's what we remember doing. We don't know where the others came from. So it was unusual for us to only bring 8 if there were 23. We only had, and I think we had to kind of scramble to be able to reinter the EV. And in fact, some of the areas that were supposed to be prepared really wasn't. It's kind of like they weren't even really dug out. And so that's what I remember. I remember that there were more than the 8 that we had provided the baskets. I mean, for the baskets for. We heard them talking.
Yes, I remember having them. Okay. And again, do you recall that AIS was originally done by a different firm? We did not do the inventory survey for Safeway. It was done by another firm. We just did the monitoring program, ASH. Do you recall that?
I remember you guys monitoring. I remember that the monitoring was supposed to, I think, only take 6 inches at a time. But I remember standing on a hill and we were watching the trucks that came to as they were excavating, right where between the Safeway building and where the preservation site is now in the back. I just remember, they did like about 10 trucks or so. They were coming in and out as you guys were, taking down the dune itself. That section, you guys were taking the air. I remember just watching the trucks go in and out, you know what I mean? And I was kind of concerned because how can one person, but I only seen one person walking, but it seemed to be more than 6 inches at a time because the trucks were just lined up and they were just coming in and out. And so, that's what I remember. We were kind of watching in that area.
Well, the procedure is, at the time when monitoring started, there was only one known burial, one previously identified burial. Now, once you get into a monitoring program and when you start to find more, you're correct. Construction will slow down to a certain pace in certain areas, and it will have to go 6 inches at a time. A lot of times when the trucks are loaded, there's already a monitored stockpile waiting in the center of the site. Because one, you can't chunk out a sand dune and load it into a truck. You have to watch the sand as it's graded, put into a stockpile, and then it gets loaded from that. That's been one of the requirements in sand dunes is if a company bids the project to take a sand dune down and chunk and run is what they call it, that's not allowed, especially if known burials are in the location. So
I only saw what I saw. Was that had a line of semi trucks, I guess, to pick up, and there are quite a bit of them, and they were moving quite they were moving at a slow pace. But again, there's only one person trying to see you know, what that person is scraping up. But you know, where there was a stock, I didn't see any stockpile. I just saw the dune face, and then I just saw the trucks coming in, and I just saw the person with the machine just filling up the truck. I didn't see any previous mound that was already excavated.
The monitoring program called for 1 monitor per piece of ground disturbing equipment. That's the way I recall the project going. There was also a cultural consultant team that would visit the site. So I guess we just remember things differently.
Absolutely.
There was, at the beginning of the project, I don't know if you recall this, but the community was concerned about the noise and that the level of activity that would be in a commercial location in the vicinity of neighborhoods. So they did lower certain areas down. So there was more excavation required, and the project did take longer. I don't know if there was a lot of community meetings on that, and I don't know if you recall that situation.
Well, I know there wasn't any community meetings held. At that time, as Burial Council had discontinued because there weren't enough council members. A lot of them had turned out, and so because this is the time that I put in for my linear descendancy, and they had to defer. But by the time that they deferred, all the members, were pretty much done with their term. And the whole part was there was no way for us to communicate with our concerns, and there was no way for my family to continue to proceed with our descendancy, because there wasn't any mechanism in place for us to do that. And the funny part is that the work was continued to I was allowed to continue to go on. And as you said, there was only one fine, but then later on, you know what I mean, if you're correct, then there were 23 more fines then. If what you're saying that they're all from that area. And so, again, it comes back to what we've been saying, is that the AIS is inadequate. Even if you didn't do the AIS, but again, it just goes to show that the work is incomplete, or the methodology that is being used to do the survey is very questionable, highly questionable, and so there are things that need to be addressed. And with all these concerns, and for a fact that we've gone to Burial Council time and time again with these same complaints, and then we actually, there is no resolve. You continue to continue on with the practices that have been detrimental in previous projects, and there is nothing, there's nothing changing, and yet the numbers of inadvertent fines becomes questionable, because then, it's like insanity. You continue to do something that doesn't work, and it's still, with the AI, the way that it's done, whether it be your company or our companies, have shown it to be deficient in its processing, because for you guys to come up and use inadvertently so loosely, when that's really not what the law dictates, is again detrimental to only one group of people. That's us. But it serves its purposes for such as an organization or company like yours to use it in the term and to be accepted that way, which is inappropriate according to the 6E law.
Well, I know, I guess we're just going to have to disagree because we're on the ground. We know the care that an inadvertent burial, whether you call it inadvertent or not, there's still so much time that goes into when you have a discovery that you didn't know its exact location. You have to stop. You have to try to determine the extent of these unknown burials. The landowner has to go into redesign. It's another huge delay. Is it needed? Absolutely. But because of the delays, because of the cost.
Excuse me, who's testifying here?
I'm trying to explain the situation.
Are you asking a question? Please ask a question.
Mr. Chang, how do you want me to handle that?
All right. I view your comments to be trying to set up a scene for a question. So I don't know if that's what you were doing, but that's what I thought you were doing. And if that is, you can continue and then pose your question.
Well, again, I knew that this cross-examination would be, stressful and we would have disagreements, so and not to go there. There was, you made a comment about that we continue to say, telling you how many burials and their location is culturally inappropriate. Do you recall exactly what we said?
I believe my comment was that is used against us. When we inquire about what happened with the burials or what is the count of burials, and being able to get information, the cultural card comes out, and then we're denied as actually the people of this place, of this country, we're denied that information. And then it's hard for us to determine what to do when that information is not made available to us. I mean, it's very important for us to find out exactly how many of our people have been disturbed. And I find it very, unless you want to tell us how many of our people you've taken throughout your career.
I haven't taken any of your people.
No,
Okay.
you said to Johanna, who testified 700, I remember I was sitting in that burial council meeting when she asked you, could it be 1,000? You said, she asked you, could it be 1,000? And you said, well, it's more like 700. That was the comment.
Okay.
That's what.
Okay, I'll move on. I think that's it. I just wanted to try to clarify some information with you, but I feel like it's just going to be a back and forth with no agreement on the content. So thank you very much.
All right.
Okay.
Just.
Okay. Redirect. Or Mr. Chang, do you have questions first?
No. Thank you.
Okay.
And you're going to ask Mr. Kamaunu some questions?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Kamaunu, how did that feel to you to have said something and then to actually be told that you were wrong about what you said?
That's just her opinion. I mean, it's just her opinion. It's what I remember, I recollect, and if she recollects something different, that's really that's her opinion. But that's what I remember. And I'm giving an account under oath is what is correct and true.
Thank you. Does that person seem to have the sensitivity to be able to understand what you just said. Do you find it interesting that she would challenge what you said as to the facts of how many burials and what went on?
I mean, can,
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Mr. Kamano, have you ever been to any other sites where Ash has been working?
yeah.
Objection outside the scope of cross-examination.
Well, overruled. You may proceed.
I have been to several sites. I think the first site I went to was Safeway was one of them, and then we went to Phase 9 because Johanna was on the burial council at the time. So I accompanied her there. I've been to Phase 6. I've also been to well, pretty much a lot of the Maui Lani.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever, at any of those times that you were on any of those other properties where Ash is working, see what would be a violation of the archaeological monitoring plan?
I believe it's talked about, but Phase 9 was an area that we actually ended up using the video that I took there with myself and Miss Ahia, where they were actually moving sand and which they called stockpile. The problem was that they didn't separate the ground, which was still sand, was still part of the dune, from the previously disturbed. So the concern came that the thing should have been, one, there was no monitor. There was no one else there except for the person in the machine, and that the supposedly pre-sifted or the stockpile sand wasn't separated from the undisturbed part of the property. And so with that part was a big concern, because how can the operator distinguish how far, before he hits the undisturbed sand? So that was.
I'm gonna object at this point. It's kind of cumulative. We already heard Miss Ahia.
I'm sorry, you're reverberating pretty badly.
Ms. Hazekamp, can we go? Yeah, you there.
We heard Mr. Kamano testify about this. It's repetitive and it's cumulative. We've had several witnesses testify about the same incident already.
Let's answer the question.
Okay.
Okay. You can go ahead with any new information.
New information?
If there's any new information.
Mr. Kamanu, do you you said you had felt a strong tie to the Maui Lani shopping center when you were working in the Maui Lani shopping center, some research. Do you at this time continue to feel this connection?
Oh yeah, very much. In fact, I hold Ho'olaulea, which I named Onoho Awa Kupa. And the reason for that use of that phrase is to stay and be accustomed. So having the overnight vigil and the Ho'olaulea each and every year allows those who don't know about the area to come and to learn about the what's going on with the burials in the dunes, but it's also to commemorate our attachment to that aina, to our people that are buried there. And so, yes, I am highly connected to that.
So since the beginning of the time that you started to actually advocate for the iwi kūpuna at this Maui Lani shopping center site, you have continued to with your advocacy and care of the iwi kūpuna there.
Right. I've been recognized by the landowner, which is HRT, I believe, by their CEO, who actually called me and basically told me that he supported our efforts to hold the whole Aulea and that celebration every year.
Thank you very much. Is there anything else that you would like to say?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Back on the record then.
Oh, okay, sorry. To paraphrase Ms. Hazuka, perhaps I have said the wrong thing, but what I'm asking you about is, do you know what the bone house is? And her answer is no, I don't. I've never heard of that. And that's just a paraphrase. I'm sorry, not a quote. And so this is a testimony from a gentleman who has been in construction on Maui for probably 3 decades. And we asked him if he would be willing to testify about the bone house, because it is rather common knowledge what the bone house is. So here is his testimony.
Aloha mai kākou. I am Alan Ornalis, resident of Kumuvili, Iao Valley, Wailuku, Maui, Hawaii. I was employed by Goodfellow Brothers for 30 years as a heavy equipment operator supervisor. I am familiar with the Maui Lani development, being that I worked in several areas during the early residential projects such as the island and the Dunes Golf Course. I know Lisa Rotuno Hazaka of Ash. Her company was in charge of the archaeological work and monitoring. I also knew Les Kululo'io, who worked with the Burial Council. I was asked by Clare Apana on September 14, 2020, if I had knowledge of a place called the Bone House in the Maui Lani development. So this is my testimony of that place I called the Bone House. I told Clare Apana and Kaniloa Kamaunu, who filmed me as we walked and drove around Maui Lani Phase 6, 9, Onehe'e Street, and the Dunes Golf Course, that yes, I knew of it. I stated that there were 2 houses located above the well house, which is now called the Dunes Golf Course. The then resident is a family friend that I was living there at least, that was living there at least 3 to 5 years before project starting. Accesses was through Dream City via Onehe'e Street, which is the area now known as Maui Wa'ena School, but a bit further mauka of the well site. Both houses were approximately 30 by 30 feet in size. It was utilized to hold, store equipment. One house was occupied by Goodfellow Brothers, and the second house was occupied by Maui Lani Archeological Team. In the archaeological team house, there were 3 walls, two side, one back, with cubby hole shelving. These cubby holes held shoe boxes. Some boxes were closed and others were not, making it visible to see that the team was storing Eevee bones. There were at least a few hundred boxes being stored to what I could visibly see. This is my testimony of the bone house on Maui Lani development.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kamaunu. I'd like to go to, this is actually not the order of what I was going to speak in, but I will do this to keep the flow going. I'd like to speak to the Maui Lani Shopping Center and the comments that were just made during questioning of Mr. Kamaunu. First of all, the email correspondence and the phone correspondence regarding the reinterment of Eevee Kupuna at the Maui Lani Safeway or Maui Lani Shopping Center project was done by myself with Hinano Rodriguez and later with Lisa Rotuno Hazuka. I was invited to do the reinterment by Hinano Rodriguez, who was then the burial sites. And so I wanted to prepare for the burial. I had no idea how the Eevee or the bones would come. Here, I'll give you Lisa's email, ask her, because she's not telling me, I don't know. And then she didn't answer me. So I went back to Hinano and I said, I don't know how many Eevee should we prepare for? And he said, and then he wrote back to me, she said, I believe it's 8. And so that is how we prepared for 8. When the 23 packets, the 23 bundles of Eevee Kupuna came, they were wrapped already in kapa. But that was so much more than 8. So we stretched the tea leaves we brought and everything to make it fit. And mind you, this is very important to me and very important to us when we are doing something ceremonial. I brought Michael Lee to be the kahu of this ceremony, and he gladly acquiesced and gave directions. So our preparation was very important to me because I had advocated for our Eevee Kupuna so fiercely. I mean, this is the first time I have ever done anything like this. The reports that Lisa is talking about was done by Fredrickson, but she did another 1 or 2 reports. I would have brought that with me if I thought that this was going to be reported incorrectly by the people who did this report. These are the first AISs I have ever read. And I was appalled to see that there were 5 burials. I went, oh my God, they're going to build this shopping center here where there's 5 burials. When we got to the Planning Commission, I went to SHPD and I begged them to come. I said, please come. You have to stop them from doing this. And they did. And we got to the burial council. There were not 5 burials. There were those burials and 16 more that were on the pu'u that were not in the report and not anywhere that I could find. And you can imagine what I felt like seeing that. How did this happen? If I didn't call SHPD, would we have known about those 16 burials on the pu'u? I will never know. But this is my first experience with advocating for our iwi kūpuna. So back to the burial site. We did a very traditional burial. And when I saw that there were so many more iwi kūpuna than we anticipated, we just made a decision that we would reinter them without causing any fuss, because this was a ceremony. But after it was over, it really bothered me. And I went through the reports and I could only count a possibility of 18 burials that could possibly have been needing to be reinterred from that site. And to this day, it still bothers me that the accounting of our iwi kūpuna was so far off. And even the SHPD gave the wrong number. He didn't know how many. He thought there was going to be the same as what he was expecting. But this is how it went for this project. By the time that we did this, when this project went through the Planning Commission, actually, I had met Annette Hugh, who is a really fabulous historian I live at the top of Kalua. She lives at the bottom of the ili of Kalua. And the Battle of Kakanilua took place in the historical records in Kalua. So we were very aware of the history that was there. And it started an era of research for us. But what we found was incorrect reporting of history. So Mr. Ferris said the first thing you do in an AIS is you gather the history, gather the pertinent data. I forgot what his words were. And the battle was incorrectly stated. The history was incorrectly stated, which I went to the firm of Munakeo and Haraga to tell them that they needed to correct this history. And the history was in the AIS. At one of the meetings just before this, Mr. Chang, do you need me to explain to you the process of going through the Planning Commission for a project?
That would help.
Okay. So you may get your grading and grubbing permits, which would in a place like this entail an AIS and certainly SHPD consultation. When you get to the Planning Commission, at this time, they did not do an EA or an EIS at the first time they went to the Planning Commission. During the this meeting, they realized that an EA was triggered by the use of the state road that was just above the property. And an EA had to be made. The next time it comes back to the burial council, to the Planning Commission, it goes for the phase 1, and then the next is the phase 2 approval. And then there's no more public input. So at phase 1, I asked them to please reconsider the project. It was not appropriate to put a shopping center inside on top of a burial ground. At that time, I asked Hinana Rodriguez, how can you mitigate putting a shopping center in the burial ground? And he said, you really can't. But that was it, and there was no more assistance. Planning Commission at that time told me, well, it'll be fine. You can take care of it at phase 2. So phase 2 came, and I asked them the same thing. And in between the phase 1 and 2, I spent a lot of time on the property with our kūpuna. And during that time, I was actually given a mitigation that I will say came from our kūpuna. And what they wanted was to have a health center built where Kanaka could come, and then they would see their descendants, and Kanaka would have a place to have their health center. Well, phase 2 came. They did interview me quite extensively and summarize my words in 2 sentences to say I had concerns. But there was also given a mitigation of that Mr. Kamaunu said, grading will go at 6 inches at a time with a soft blade. And being such a novice at this, I actually believed it. And Ms. Hazuka talked about it in the burial council, that that's what they were going to do. So when the big scoop loaders that loaded the hauling trucks for the sand kept digging the sand that way, I complained. I complained to Ms. Hazuka's staff, to Ash. I complained to SHPD. I complained to the Planning Commission. They're not following this mitigation. I did not get a reply from Ms. Hazuka. And I did not get anybody to enforce this mitigation. At the same time, the relationship with the Iwi Kupuna continued for me. And I did go to the burial council several times, asking them for information, asking them to be more respectful. you know, that first AIS that Ms. Hazuka is talking about never went to the top of the property where the store was actually built. It was really done for more for the road. And so there was just not adequate investigation, although they had already sand mined that place. So in the mitigation of monitoring, and I asked Ash over and over again to follow the mitigation. I also asked Ash on that, and I was never given that ability to do that. As a matter of fact, they made it harder and harder for me to go on the site. But I acquiesced in wearing my shoes and hard hat when I needed to go on there. And it was, I would say, a fairly hostile environment for me to go. On other projects, the archaeologist has been much more friendly and much more amenable to visiting a site or sharing information of what they're finding. I mean, they actually talk to me, but not here. So just want to say that I am not sure why Ms. Hazuka remembers things so differently, but some very important elements are being remembered incorrectly that affect our iwi kūpuna. Sorry, Mr. Chang. Can I take a 5-minute break? I just need a glass of water.
All right,
Thank you. I'm so sorry.
no problem.
Thank you.
Okay, back on the record, please.
Okay. Okay. I'd like to go. I said, was I supposed to do that? I didn't do that. Yet Ms. Hazuka claims that the sand was sifted. I didn't see that, but usually when I see the sifting equipment that is used by Ash, it is not a fine mesh screen. It is not a 1/4 or 1/8 inch. So I don't think that we are. I was so touched by the story from Dr. Crabtree about 9/11 and how important each one of those fragments were to someone, and especially if that's your family, how important it is, even if you could find only one little piece, what it means to someone. And I don't think there's that appreciation that has been going on. I could be wrong, but I don't believe that there is, because of the times that Evie has been found in sand. And I did not bring my entire record of studies and reports, or we will be here until next week. But there have been many instances of Evie in sand. and it goes to a premise that the iwi kūpuna are not really important, or this fragment of a bone, which might have been the last thing that some mother had of their child who died in the 9/11, doesn't mean anything. And I think that that's something that I have seen in the reports, that you wonder sometimes why the Kanaka are mad. Is an entire collision of values. But that little fragment is protected by law. As you will see in Exhibit 2, the temporary injunction of Phase 6. Excuse me. I'd like to go to the, well, let me go to Mr. Pantaleo for a minute. I'd like to address the question of whether Mr. Pantaleo is really fulfilling his role as a principal investigator, whether that is possible by time. It's just not being done in many instances. And I have already told you about the Grand Wailea and the 12 years and the many rewrites. What I didn't tell you about is on the other side of those rewrites were people in the public who knew that it was incomplete, that those AIS, those archaeological inventory surveys are incomplete. And what I want to tell you is, at that time, it was not Miss Hazuka, it was Aki Sinoto, who was being the person that Jeff Pantaleo was signing for. And I was involved in that project, and we found many sites, really very large and significant sites. And when it was taken, the information was taken to the Mr. Pantaleo and Mr. Sinoto, they dismissed us. We did a slideshow for the SHPD, for the county, and for the archaeologists. And Mr. Pantaleo was not there. That's a pretty significant finding to show an archaeology company or an archaeologist, a principal investigator who has done an archaeological inventory survey, that you've missed 60 sites. Come, we're going to show it to you because you didn't want to hear us say it. We're going to show it to you, the county and SHPD at the same time. Mr. Pantaleo was not there. And if this is any kind of indication of the kind of oversight, the kind of monitoring he does, the so to speak, putting out fires, being there when it's important, I do not think that it is meant for him to be a principal investigator living on another island, signing for somebody else, doing somebody else doing their work. At the end of the Wailea 670, another company picked up the contract by order of a lawsuit. And in the end, I thought you heard me testify, 1,000 features. I mean, it is a large area, but 1,000 features. How is that competent or adequate archaeology? So I shudder. That was not about iwi kupuna. Those were archaeological, historical, cultural sites. If those were our iwi kupuna, what might have happened to the 1,000 iwi kupuna that were not recorded? I think that I cannot say any better than Miss Crabtree about the insufficiency of studies. I can only say that it does matter. It does have an effect on us, and it has a great effect on the project. Because as Alan Downer said, one of the purposes of the AIS is to identify what needs to be preserved. And according to Dr. Ferris today, there's nothing more important to protect than a human burial, an iwi kupuna. And that is just not happening here. The redesign, as we have experienced it, is not for the iwi kupuna protection. It's how can we get this thing done? And okay, we got to leave this iwi kupuna in the road, and that one, so that we can build another 11 houses. Good archaeology, good identification of sites. That is the key. I was just at a site in Makana. We challenged it. We got the team of Teresa Donham and Tanya Lee Gregg in to do more archaeology. And when they did it, the redesign was amazingly different. Amazingly different. How much more could be saved? How much of the view planes could be preserved? And then the actual story of what was found could be discovered. And this is what better archaeology does. This is what sufficient archaeology does. You don't find burials by the concentrations over and over and over again, while the sand dunes are disappearing. Everybody knows the burials are in the sand dunes. Highest probability, well-known fact. I've even heard Miss Hazuka say you'll find them at the higher elevations. So we know where they are. But the design does not go there. The AIS, I will give you an example. In phase 9, Maui Lani, the sand mining site, the last sand mining site, it started out with, I believe, 2 TMK numbers in it. And the property was cut and changed. The TMK was changed 3 times so that there would be no burials in the property site. So therefore, you can get through the permitting process, even though you know you are in a sand dune with related burials adjacent and all the way around the property. Is this good archaeology? Is it the responsibility of an archaeology company to do good archaeology? Or is it the responsibility to do what Ms. Hazuka always says to us? That is, it's not my fault. I don't make the decisions.
I object. Archaeologists do not change TMKs. That has to do with the landowner and the county of Maui. No archaeological firm has control of a changed TMK.
Are we hearing testimony on?
Sorry.
Sorry, I'm sorry if I spoke out of turn. I didn't know how to object.
I'm sorry, I was keeping at the wheel.
May I check something? Jessica, were you able to catch what Ms. Hazuka was saying?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
My apologies, Mr. Chen.
I guess I'll answer that. I was relating a story of what happened. So anyway, I have many more facts to bring you, and we are at the close of time. I can do that for you, or I can continue to tell you about the many ways that we disagree with Ash about what is adequate archaeology. So should I just continue on? Or I don't know what your plan is for the rest of the day, Mr. Chang.
Okay. Maybe let's go off the record and discuss that.
Okay.
All right. So why don't we go back on the record and then continue with Ms. Apana's testimony?
Okay. Well, it's kind of interesting. On one of the days, we heard on the kind of the feedback, the extra sounds. Ms. Hazuka state that she's a construction worker, and I'm wondering if that is also a hat that she wears too. As for myself,
Well, objection on relevant.
I was just starting my talk.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. As for myself, I believe that I could be qualified by Dr. Downer to be an archaeologist. I have a higher education degree. I have taken a few years of anatomy, and I have also done many years of field work with archaeologists, being trained by PhD archaeologists, and I have actually attended field school at Maui College. I believe that I should be called an archaeologist also. So, with that said, I'd like to tell you what it's like to work with some of the fine archaeologists that I have had the pleasure of being with. I know that I don't write laws, but I am a person who's very affected by what happens in the archaeology community. Working with some of the higher level archaeologists have shown me that it really makes a difference, the degree of training and the degree that the person has. And of course, this will never be 100% because you always have exceptions. But with every PhD archaeologist I have had the pleasure of working with, their knowledge and the analysis that is available to them is far superior than even very good master's levels archaeologists. And so when you go down to past the master's level archaeologist, I have had so many problems with people who are trained at that level, trained by other not archaeologists, and what suffers is our sacred sites, the identification of sacred sites, the knowledge about what elements, if you were Hawaiian, you would say you would be a kahuna omaka. What you see and what you can observe, it is like night and day between these three levels. And when it comes to iwi kūpuna, we want absolutely the best care and treatment. And we could have extended our time to show you this. Well, we hope that we did give you a sample of the kind of what experience really counts. It does count, and the person's ability to even understand what another person from another value system finds important, so that we can have like more the community-based archaeology. It's very important that happen, but the door does not open if the consultation door remains closed. And the burial council, I suppose you will have to look at your own, do your own research for the laws, because I'm not sure that anyone has stated it correctly, as I have seen it in the laws, about the function and the importance, what a burial council can do, what their decisions are. They are not the only consultative body, and that is absolutely true, as seen by recent letters from the archaeology branch to potential people who are applying for permit for people who are applying to do archaeology for a project. And we're happy to see that. We have not enjoyed that consultation with this firm. And no matter how many times Ms. Hazuka says that, I have not had consultation. And I have asked at the December, after the December Burial Council meeting in 2017 and the 2018 Burial Council meeting, when I would see her, to please talk. A lot of this have centered around Maui Lani Phase 6, Increment 4, because of this lack of feeling that it was important to talk to Kanakas who are coming forward, such as ourselves. But we have been known to this company. I believe the first time I sat in a meeting for Munakio was probably in 2007. And at that time, one of the bones of contention was the misreporting of the Battle of Kakanilua. And this continued through the next two archaeological reports. I would have to correct them. The ash again and again. It upset me so much that I went to the legislature and I just about got a resolution passed to recognize that the Battle of Kakanilua happened and to correct all of the reports in SHPD that were incorrect about the history of Kakanilua or omitted it completely. The Maui Lani Project District started with the contention that we must proceed carefully because this battle happened here and what we might expect. And as it went through the time, it was like, well, we don't want to talk about that battle. You know, there have been burials coming up, it seemed like. And so this is why our organization is named after Kakanilua, to mirror the attempt at erasure of the Kanaka Maoli people by erasing the burial sites of our most sacred, highest treasure, our iwi kūpuna. And if you don't understand that, if it is not understood, it is legislated as a right. It is legislated as a right that must be upheld to allow us our traditional practice. And I have to say, by getting the CERD declaration, Kanaka Maoli are not the only ones who can see that it is a crime of inhumanity not to do your utmost to protect these burials. So we have come forward, and the number of times, I cannot tell you what it feels like to hear the owner of this company speak to Miss Ahia and say, did you know that nobody told us about that they were going to be on the site on the day you filmed us, where we didn't have monitors? Because I would have to say, in February of 2017, someone sent me a video of the no monitor and the machines moving, grading, moving sand. And then I went on the property in February and I filmed the same thing. And other people have filmed it. We chose that one film because the judge chose that one film to use as an example. To state that as if that was a one-time occurrence does not show me that this person is ready to come to the table and treat with respect the Kanaka Maoli.
You get two.
This has been a very hard thing to do, to listen to excuses such as, other firms do that, other firms have this, but we have flattened out sand dunes that are flat. In 2005, Maui Lani went to the Land Use Commission to add 50 acres. The AIS, the Archaeology Inventory Survey, was not finished. But they said, it doesn't matter, we're not really gonna change the landform. I don't know who was involved with that AIS. I don't know, but I do know who was monitoring the sand pits, the Amaron sand mining pit. I do know that they took down those dunes and sand mined them down. And that was no change. What is the complicity of an archaeological company such as ASH? Without the archaeology, you don't get your permits, you don't get to finish. But somehow they are allowed not to finish their studies and go through these processes. Example, Waiale project. Archaeologist, there are two archaeologists, I believe. SCS, Scientific Consulting Services, Michael Dega, and Jeff Pantaleo does not come, the principal investigator, but Miss Lisa Hazuka is there, and the archaeology is not done, is not finished, and they are allowed to slide. It is not my fault that they are allowed to slide and then they don't complete their reports. It is something that we would like to see followed as a course of law.
Sorry, my bad.
And I believe that it is the duty of whoever gives the permit to see that this work is done. Not because everybody else doesn't have it done, but because that is the law. And that law was made to raise the standards of archaeology, to give more protection to the historical properties and sacred sites, to do what could be done to protect what is precious. And for us, the most precious is our iwi kupuna. It is not the time to do the status quo, especially if the status quo is not following the law. God, I have actually more things, sorry. What did you say?
Nothing.
Okay. I have questions. I always have questions about some of the work that has been done. I question why work continued at the Grand Wailea in the multi-scepter when it was decided the multi-scepter was not going to be built. Why did the digging continue? When they finished burying, the construction workers finished doing the burying of the iwi that was disturbed, why did they continue digging? And the construction workers thought that they had laid the iwi kupuna to rest and everything had stopped. But when we go by that burial site, it sometimes smells like sewage. And there are pipes and there are large drains. And we have questions, but we are not consulted. And is that because we're not the in-group? We're not Alanui o Makena? So we don't count because we have a different thought and a different set of values, because maybe we would have stopped 340 iwi kupuna from being disinterred from the Grand Wailea, or we would have stopped the ongoing progression of plowing through the sand dunes, knowing that you're going to hit iwi kupuna. An admission that's made by Miss Hazuka herself. But when you look at it, if I dug up burials, what would happen to me? Probably nothing. I don't have an archaeology degree. I don't have a professional license to answer to. What is the cost actually to the people who are doing this work and allow this development to go on this way? Other archaeologists refuse to do this work. I know archaeologists who have never dug up a burial or disturbed the burial.
Continue an objection on this one.